Welcome, everyone. Dr. Anthony Criniti IV here, also known as Dr. Finance. You're on the Dr. Finance Live podcast. We have an amazing guest speaker today. We got JB Owen. JB Owen owns an amazing publishing company. We're going to learn all about it. She's also an author and an amazing entrepreneur, and also has a new book with Les Brown, one of the top motivational speakers in the world. We had him on the podcast a few episodes ago, so definitely check that out. But let's get to the interview with JB Owen. Welcome, JB. How are you?
I'm doing fantastic. Thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure to be here. Love, love, love speaking to you and your audience. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Appreciate it. And all right, JB. So we're going to start and basically I'd like to do a quick 30-second, profile snapshot of yourself. If you can just basically narrow down your bio in 30 seconds, then we'll get to your story afterwards.
Sure, absolutely. Well, I'm blessed to be a publisher. I help authors, entrepreneurs, mentors, and experts in the industry tell their amazing Ignite moments, that story that really changed them and profoundly pushed them in a new direction and really actually helped them become the greatest version of themselves. So I'm blessed to be publishing 700 authors already, 17 books in the last 2 years. And I really, really, really love supporting people and building their brands and stepping into that legacy version of them. Little bit more than 30 seconds, but that's the condensed version of me.
That's the Clubhouse intro.
Yes.
So thank you, JB. Appreciate that. All right, so let's get into your story. So JB, you obviously have a very successful publishing company right now, and I want to just backtrack though. I want to learn how you got to this point. Let's start with, you're originally from Canada. Is that correct?
Yeah, I was born and raised in Canada in the prairies in a small town. I call it small, but people have pointed out to me it's not that small. 70,000 people. It felt small to me. And I lived here until 10 days after I graduated from high school. I moved to Vancouver, lived in the big city there for 21 years. Absolutely lived on the coast.
Wow. So you eventually moved to Vancouver, or let's step back. What was it like growing up in Canada?
Well, I never really liked my hometown. I'll be honest with you. I just didn't feel like I fit in here. I was a little bit of an odd duck. I love fashion. I loved the big city. I love theater. And so I was always dressing different and always into acting and performing and doing things. I always was making things. And so when living in a town where it's primarily farmers and people who are just, I always call it squirreling away and waiting for the spring to come. It was really hard on me as a young individual. I wanted to do things and go places and see things and expand my mind. And where I grew up, I felt was just really, really confining.
So where did you eventually go to college at? Was it in Vancouver?
Yeah, I left my hometown and I moved to Vancouver. I did 2 years of fashion design there. And then 2 years later, I finished my degree in Toronto and moved to Toronto to finish fashion design and textile science there.
Wow. So you went from one side of Canada to the other side. You really got to explore Canada.
Yeah, and I drove both times. I took my convertible Mustang, put the roof down, and I drove across Canada by myself.
Wow, that's awesome. So, okay, so you want to tell us about post-college? How did you start becoming, well, I know you had said you always were an entrepreneur since you were a kid. Is that right?
Yeah, I started my first business when I was 9. I actually used to sell little necklaces at the local bar that my dad would visit on Friday nights, and people would come in and out of the bar, and I would be like, "Hey, mister, want to buy a necklace for your girl?" Or be like, "Hey, that's a really nice outfit. You need a necklace to go with it." And they would always look at what I made and smile and try it on. And I would always, have a little mirror for them to see. And I always would make a sale. I literally would go home every night with an empty, basket and a pocket full of coins. And it was such an enjoyable experience. I got to make something. I got to see people happy. I got to make money. And it just became this entrepreneurial thing that I did for right until now. I've had multiple businesses. I keep making new businesses. I love making things. I love seeing people's eyes light up. And so it's just been an entrepreneur in me was born at a very young age.
What do you like to do for fun?
Well, recently, so I just turned 50 a year and a half ago, and I decided that I wanted to start cycling. So I have a tandem bike. My husband and I have been cycling. So last summer we cycled to Alaska to the top of the world highway, 6,500 kilometers. And
Wow.
the summer before that, we cycled across Canada, 5,000 kilometers, and ended up in Ottawa at Parliament Building.
Wait,
So
you cycled
cycling,
all the way to Alaska from where
yeah,
you're at?
yes.
Wow. That's amazing.
Yeah. So it was the top of the world highway. We're like, let's cycle to the top of the world. And it's really actually going to become my next book. I'm writing a book called How to Get to the Top of the World, because when you cycle, you learn so many amazing things about life and about business and about yourself and about determination, about perseverance, about giving up. And so my cycling has sort of been my fun thing.
What was the last destination in Alaska? Did you actually get to where the Arctic Circle is? I believe there's a few towns before that or
Correct.
something.
No. So we came up through Canada and then went all the way up through BC and then went into the Yukon. And then right outside of Alaska, we had to stop because of COVID. We couldn't actually cross the Alaska border. So we cycled like right up to it and waved. And so we made it right to Alaska.
That's very courageous. I got to say, I went to Alaska a few years back and did a trip, and we circled. We did the loop around Alaska as much as you can drive. There's a circle that goes up to, I believe, Fair something.
Fairfax. Yeah.
Fairbanks. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
And then it goes back around to Anchorage. And but it's half of that. It's dangerous. They didn't even have cops protecting you. You're on your own. It's like Wild West. So to do that by bike is really courageous. And
yeah, we saw bears. I have a really great video. The very first time there was a bear, like literally in the ditch beside us, like 8 feet away.
wow.
But we saw multiple bears. We saw the buffalo. I have a really great story. There was like a herd of about 60 buffaloes sitting at the bottom of the hill, and they were all just sitting in the grass. And we came down the hill on our bike, and I was like, wee, and like, look, there's a buffalo. And I kind of spooked them all. And I think that this, we're about 8 feet wide on our tandem bike. They all got up and they started stampeding through the ditch and on the highway. And we were coming, and it was just like we created an entire stampede of buffalo. But I was like so excited. I'm like, we're riding with the buffalo. And I had my phone out, and everyone just thought I was insane, even though the buffalo were like running and like tearing trees down, and it was like stampeding, and it was like, we're with the buffalo. So yes, we saw lots of animal porcupines and eagles, and like just really phenomenal to be out in that nature and just be really stepped into the world of Mother Nature. We had no technology or TV or telephone or satellite or anything. Like we couldn't even make a phone call for about 4 days at about 6 different times. So we were really tapped out of what was going on in the world.
Did you encounter any moose?
Yes, we saw moose and baby moose, and we saw elk. Yeah, we saw, and my favorite one was the caribou. There were some caribou on the road, and when they ran, they kind of ran like they were very comical. It was like very cute and funny.
That's funny. Yeah, I'm just trying to picture it from a bicyclist perspective, because that same trip I was telling you about, we actually had a moose walk in front of our car, and I was going about 65, but I saw him like about a mile or a half mile back, so I was able to slow down. But he walked and just stood there and blocked the traffic, and like I realized, what can we do?
Right.
We can't go around him. There's only one road here. We have to wait until at some point this moose decides to just keep going, and hopefully he won't come at us, but I can imagine we were in a car with the safety of a car, being in a bike. I mean,
there was some moments that it was really a bit spooky. Like one time there was a buffalo like right there, and he literally like we were on the road and he was on the road, and their eyes are like so black, and their face is so massive, and the drool is like pouring out of his lips. And like we were kind of going by, and I was like looking at him, and it was just so ominous because I didn't know if he would like get spooked and charge us, and so we had to pedal really fast.
That sounds cool. We're going to talk more about the traveling stuff later, because I realized that you're very passionate about travel. So I think that would be a good topic. Well, let's continue learning more about your entrepreneurial journey. So, actually, let's step back for a second. You had mentioned the bike across Canada. I think it's a good time to to continue with that, why did you decide to bike across Canada? Like why bike first of all, and why Canada? I mean, there's any million places you can go.
Well, a couple of things. I mean, COVID had limited us from traveling, so we really couldn't be leaving Canada or traveling anywhere, obviously, in 2020. So it was interesting because that whole bike story actually started about 8 months prior. So my husband and I were in Prague actually in October, and we had renewed our wedding vows there. It was a really beautiful experience. We went to Prague Castle and had this beautiful wedding experience. And my husband said, wow, your birthday's coming up. Your 50th is going to come up next June. What do you want to do for your 50th? And I thought about it. I couldn't really think of like what monumental thing did I want to do for my 50th birthday. And after a couple of days of pondering, I realized that when I was 17, I had really wanted to be on the cover of Vogue. I wanted to be a fashion model, lived in a small town, wanted to walk the Paris runways, and just never was able to fulfill that dream. I went to the big city and met with an agent, and he said, "You'll never make it. You're too fat. You can't do it. Give up now. Don't even try." And I walked out of his office and I did exactly that. I gave up that dream. I didn't even try. And I just literally parked that whole wish aside and just always felt like I'm too fat. I'm not good enough. I should never try. And so when I was turning 50, I'm like, you know what? I'm going to go back and resurrect that dream. I'm going to see what it would look like for a 50-year-old woman to knock on some doors and turn over some rocks and go and be on the cover of Vogue. So to do that, what I needed to do was get in shape. I'm like, I'm on the cover of Vogue. I need to get in shape. I need to look good. And so I was like, what would I want to do to like, I don't like going to the gym. I don't like just pumping iron. I'm like, what could I do that would be really phenomenal? That would really get me into shape. And COVID had started in March. And so I was feeling like we were all so trapped and we weren't allowed to do stuff. We were kind of waiting to see what the world is going to let us do. And so I was like, I'm going to cycle across Canada and show people that you can do anything. Like you can get up off your couch, and despite COVID, because it was still early on in COVID, it wasn't as restricted as it is now. I was like, let's go show people what's possible. And I really got committed to this whole idea of what's possible. So we decked out this huge 32-foot motorhome with Ignite possibilities on the side. And we put this big decal on it that said, "What's your dream?" And we cycled across Canada, and everywhere we stopped, we took photos of people pressing this button on the side of our motorhome and asking them what their dream was and putting it on social media. And the interesting thing is that I will share this is a lot of people didn't know what their dream was. Like a lot of people pondered and stopped and paused and kind of had to like think about what their dream was. People were afraid to share. Some people were too shy. People didn't want to say. And it was really fascinating to experience how society is like ambition shaming. Like we don't want people to have ideas and suggestions and possibilities. And so I really got committed. Obviously, that's why I did it the next summer, is because I really want to awaken what's possible for people and realize they can go after their dreams. They can go get it. Now, I still haven't made it to the cover of Vogue, but that's okay, because, everything is a door the hinge to open a door to another opportunity. So I've just been having a lot of fun with it and inspiring people along the way.
Wow, that is an awesome story. And and speaking of the cover thing, like I think Elon Musk's mom actually just made the cover of was it Cover Girl or something, and she was in her 70s or something like that. So it could happen, and that was her dream from when she was a kid. So yeah.
Anything is possible. And, the interesting thing about beauty, and, women feel this all the time, is what is beauty? How do we define beauty? How do we decide what's beautiful? Why is it age or thin or this or that or skin color? Like really, it's time that we start breaking the paradigm of what is beautiful and realizing we're all beautiful exactly the way we are. God made us beautiful. We showed up. We're beautiful. We're amazing just the way we are. And so that's kind of a little bit more to the story, which leads into the way that I love to help people tell their unique stories and really help people share what's in their heart and their story behind what they're going after.
Wow. So to end that story, you made it to where was your final destination? I think it was front of the
Yeah. Well, this is a great story too, because we wanted to get to Halifax and dip our toe in the ocean and the Atlantic. And when we got to New Brunswick, because of COVID, the Atlantic bubble was allowing no one into that area without that didn't live there. So as we're like literally at the New Brunswick border, we're like, we have to turn around. We have to pivot. We have to make a change. And so we all got the map out in our motorhome, and everybody was looking at it, because my two daughters went with me, and we had a driver that drove our motorhome while we cycled. And we're like, okay, let's loop back and let's go to the Parliament buildings. And so we go to the Parliament buildings, and it was incredible, beautiful day, 5,000 kilometers, we're celebrating, we're just taking pictures and hugging. We were right there in front of the big Centennial Flame. And this is so interesting. Never before in history had they ever had an open mic opportunity at the Parliament buildings, but that day they had set up these giant speakers, and this big rally was happening, and they were actually letting Canadians, just everyday Canadians who put their hand up, to go up on the mic and share. And so I put my hand up, and I'm like, I'm going to speak at the Parliament building. And so my kids were like so embarrassed, and they're like, no, Mom, don't. And so in my cycle gear, my cycle cleats, and my helmet, I go up on stage in front of all the people at the Parliament building, and I get on stage, and I was like, I'm Canadian, and I just cycled across Canada, and everyone was cheering. And then I started talking about possibilities and going after your dreams and showing the next generation what's possible. And so that's fascinating, because when I was 11, my social studies teacher was talking about Parliament Hill, and we were studying Parliament Hill and social studies. And I was like, one day I'm going to speak on Parliament Hill. And my social studies teacher was like, no, you won't. No, you can't. Like, are you going to be in politics? And I was like, no, one day I'm going to speak on Parliament Hill. And so I was like, God has this masterful plan. We couldn't go to New Brunswick, so we went to Ottawa, and I got to speak on Parliament Hill.
That is really funny. I did a little bit of my homework before I showed up here. I watched that video of you in front of there. And to tell you the truth, I'm glad you explained this, because I'm like, the question in the back of my head is, was that microphone designated just for you? But this story is even more funnier now, because now it's like, whoa, open mic for everybody, perfect time, and never happens. And you show up and you're like, hey, I just drove a bike across Canada. And that's, folks, you got to watch that video, because she has a great round of applause at the end of her speaking, and it makes it so much more interesting to know that she just randomly went up there, and what a perfect timing. So
yeah, thank you so much. My 14-year-old was videoing it on my phone, and she was so embarrassed. Like, she didn't want anyone to know that she was videoing. She didn't want anyone to know that's her mom. It was so cute.
That is awesome.
Oh,
so you stopped at Parliament though, right? That was your last stop?
Yes. Yeah.
Oh, okay. All right, that's awesome. Thank you so much. Love that story. All right, JB, so tell us about so you had a real estate business in Vancouver. So I want to learn more about your entrepreneurship before we get to your publishing.
Yeah, well, just to clarify, I actually didn't have a real estate business. I had we bought houses, and we would restore them, and we would rebuild them, and then we would sell them. So we were actually just having a really great opportunity with the market. Vancouver is a beautiful environment, and in the early 2000s, houses were, the market was booming. And so we were buying houses and renovating them and turning them around and selling them. And so I was really into renovations and decorations. And I was pregnant for quite a few of the houses. So I was the big pregnant lady with the work truck at, hauling lumber and climbing up the ladder and doing all those things. So I always used to joke around, I should have a reality television show, because why do people get so excited about renovating while they're pregnant and, getting a pet and all these things? And so I was that lady, but then I was doing it for multiple houses.
Did you sell Oprah her house?
No.
Wow. So yeah, you took advantage of the rising prices, and basically we're flipping houses in Vancouver.
Yeah, it was really, really a fun time, and just, lots of experience and lots of learning on, whenever you buy an old house and you start taking it apart, you never know what you're going to find. You never know what you're going to uncover. And it just always sort of becomes a bigger job than you ever imagined. But it was always so rewarding to put so we often bought older houses and sort of brought them back to their beauty and brought them back to their majesty. And it was just such a rewarding thing. I think that's a common theme in the life of JB. I love to create things and make them better. And then I just love to see that sparkle at the end. I do that with the authors. I love helping them tell their story, and then their eyes light up. And I had a kids clothing company, and, just love seeing moms buy clothes for their kids and their kids excited. So there's always that level of excitement in everything that I do. I want to see people happy.
Yeah, so let's talk about you had an unbelievably successful kids clothing business. You want to talk a little more about that as well?
Well, I worked in the film business for 15 years after I got my degree in fashion design, and that was a really exciting time. But then I decided, okay, it was time for me to get pregnant. So I finished my last film, actually with Dwayne Johnson was my last film. And like a very structured individual, I'm like, I'm going to get pregnant. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do that. And so I got pregnant right on time, right on schedule. I had my son right on schedule. And about 5 months as into my mummyhood, I realized like, wow, boys really get ripped off when it comes to clothing. And when I was living on the West Coast, we had really intense rain and then we had really intense sun. And I was like, there's no good rain clothes for kids. There's no good UV protected clothes for kids. And so I got my nanny to look after my kids, flew to Hong Kong and flew to China and started working with a factory and started making kids clothing. And I just immediately knew that I wanted to do that and make functional, practical clothes that really helped kids and helped moms be affordable and fashionable at the same time. They called us the Lululemons of kids' clothes, which was very apropos because a lot of us moms, I mean, Lululemon was just really taking off at that time. Chip was from Vancouver. And so all these moms are wearing Lululemon, but kids didn't have the same thing. And I was like, wow, kids are more active than the moms. We need active clothes for kids. And so we created an active clothing company way before it was even a thing. And we were super, super successful. But it was interesting. Lots of times, like, especially when I would go to Asia, I'd be like, well, we're making active clothes for kids. And they would be like, active clothes for kids. And I'd be like, yeah. And they'd be like, oh, it was like almost like it took people a minute to realize like kids are super active. They need clothes that help them be active.
So that business was pretty successful, and that was that was before right before the publishing business, right?
Yeah. So I
Yeah.
did that for 4 years. We were very successful. We sold around the world. We did amazing things. And I just had my daughter at the same time after that, after my son, 2 years later, had my daughter. So then I started making all kinds of, we did disposable diapers, non-disposable diapers. We did water bottles. We were like one of the first companies to bring in the water bottles that were all lit up to code and sort of replaced sippy cups with stainless steel water bottles, and just really on the forefront of sort of the eco movement for kids clothing and kids diapers and all those sorts of things. So very, very enjoyable. But my kids got older. My kids started to grow out of it. And I too started to burn out a little bit. I was working a lot of hours, a lot of time, going to China almost 5 times a year.
Wow.
And at one point I just realized, like, why am I selling kids clothes when I'm not even spending time with my own kids? And so made a big, massive shift. I just decided to close my business, and I decided to just walk away and be a mom and spend time with my kids. So that was a real big turning point for me, when I really just knew that it was time for me to close. My marriage was ending. I was burnt out. I wasn't feeling well. I was unhealthy, and I just was making the most money I've ever made and the unhappiest I'd ever been.
Wow.
So it was really a shift that I needed to make. Now, and I tell people it didn't change one thing, I changed everything.
So before we get into the publishing business, so I just want to step back. I didn't realize this about you. So you were working in the movie industry for 15
Yes.
years. What were your roles there?
So as a fashion, because I had my degree in fashion design and textile science, I went into the costume department. And so I worked in the costume department and worked my way up to what we call a set supervisor. So set supervisors are people who are completely responsible for all the costumes and anything to do with the clothing that is on the actors. So when Arnold Schwarzenegger was getting shot and bullets were pinging off of his clothes and blood was oozing out, that was me. I was the person there with my little lab coat and my little blood squeegee and all of that. When Jessica Alba was in the water in Dark Angel and getting dunked down, and I was in the water with her with my little hip waders a few feet over to the side. And so I was the person that was always right beside the main cast and making sure that their costumes were always perfect. And what we call continuity. So, if his button was done up in this scene, when camera was this way, camera turns around, his button's still done up. But the interesting thing is we never shoot a movie in order. So if, they walk into the courthouse in July and they're wearing a coat and a purse on their left shoulder, and then 6 months later, we film them stepping into the courthouse, and now it's, a different temperature outside, and the actress doesn't want to wear her coat anymore. It's like, oh no, you have to have your coat, and you have to have your purse on your left shoulder, and it has to look like this. And so that was my job.
Wow.
All those little details.
That is really interesting. So you were up and close with real superstars, Arnold Schwarzenegger, The Rock.
Yeah, really,
Wow.
really, really blessed to work right next to them and be a part of what they were doing. And if, I remember with Dwayne, we were with the scene, he was under a house that was in the movie called Walking Tall. And there was a guy trying to shoot him. And so they climbed under the house and there's that little 4 feet of space under the house. And so I was like right under there with them and right, just outside of the camera, you can't see me, but he's under there and there's dust and dirt and everything. And so I was under there with him and been in lots of situations like that with the actors, on the top of a roof just before they're going to jump and do a stunt, those sorts of things. So movie magic is incredible. And I was really, really blessed to be in that business for a long time.
Wow, that is awesome, JP. And that's, I'm sure, have translated into your future entrepreneurial business, especially like the clothing thing. Now that makes a lot more sense. Well, you already had the background with working with clothing, right? So, all right, thank you, JB. All right, so let's focus on what you're great at right now, which is the publishing business. So you already gave us a hint to why you did it, but just to make it official, why did you decide to start the publishing business? Maybe if you can summarize that in a minute or less.
Well, when I was growing up in my small town, my mom was an entrepreneur and actually was quite fascinating. My mom was a very successful business owner in our town. In fact, she still has the same company she opened. It's celebrated their 40th year anniversary. So I would come home from school to my mom's office and I would sit and wait for my mom to finish work.
Hmm.
And her secretary would go home for the day and I would sit and play on her secretary's typewriter. And so I would write stories and poems and all kinds of things to like pass my time while I was waiting for my mom to be finished work. And so writing was always just a way for me to share and express myself. And so I wrote for years. After I finished school in Toronto, I actually moved to the Dominican Republic for 3 years. And I decided I wanted to just, be a beach bum and live on an island and just relax. But I also had quite a tumultuous relationship with my mom in my teenage years. So while I was away in the Dominican, I wrote my mom letters back then. I mean, we didn't have email and we didn't have phones. So I had to write my mom, actually handwrite her letters. Eventually fax came along. So I would write her letters and fax them to her. But I wrote my mom 200 letters to try to heal our relationship. And the interesting thing is she never wrote me back. But when I came home after 3 years, I had an incredibly wonderful relationship with her. I'd really transformed all of the, discord between us. And so I wrote my first book in 2003 about how to heal a relationship between mothers and daughters and how adult daughters feel like I am your child, but I'm not a child. And so how to really create that dynamic between mothers and daughters. And so I've always had the gift of writing, the bug for writing, the joy of writing. And so I've been writing books all along. In 2018, I was sitting in a conference and people were telling their story and everyone in the conference was so engaged and so involved and really heartfelt and compassionately feeling towards these people up on the stage telling their stories. In fact, when people got off the stage, the audience members would get up and like hug them. And there was this real friendship that was built. And I kind of sat there thinking like, you know what, we need to tell more stories. We need to create something here. And that's how the publishing of Ignite really happened. Because what I realized is everyone has an Ignite moment. Everyone has that moment that literally changes their life. In fact, we have multiple moments along the way, but there's often that one moment that people can remember so succinctly that was the moment that if I just would have done this then, or ever since that moment, I decided to do this. And I felt like where we were going in the world is that stories really unite us and they bring us together. And it doesn't matter, what color your skin is or where you live or how much money you have in your pocket. You understand the human story. You understand the hero's journey. And so I felt like it was time for us to tell these authentic stories. I had my own stories that I was hiding, my own skeletons in the closet, my own things that I needed to, sort of purge my soul by writing it down and sharing it and find the healing and the golden nuggets in it and the silver lining. And so it just took off. And now, obviously, 17 books later, people are just loving sharing their Ignite moments. And I'm super blessed to be doing that and just enjoying every minute of it.
So you were actually, from what I understand, you were publishing before this company was built. You actually were helping other people for like 15 years or so publish books. And then you
Yeah,
just
absolutely. I
put
was
it all
working with
together.
solo authors. Yeah, I was working with
Yeah.
one-on-one solo authors. I was helping people make their products because I had so many connections in China. I was doing angel cards with people and food journals and gratitude journals and all kinds of products, candles, jewelry, clothing. And so, but books was really a big passion for me. But a lot of times authors weren't making it to the finish line because writing a book is hard, and knowing all the key components. Yeah, I want to write a book, but now I need to know how to edit it. Now I need to know how to design it. Now I need to know how to typeset it. And then I got to manufacture it and produce it and export it and import. And then I got to ship it and market it and build a website. And so what was happening is all of these authors that I was working with were just running out of steam, running out of time, running out of energy, running out of money. And so I was like, wow, we really need to reinvent this process so that it's easier, more enjoyable, fun, and people are getting to the finish line and succeeding and having the energy to do the next book and the next book and getting them out to the consumer, because these books are really great. And so that was really the sort of the pivotal point of changing from doing solo books, which I still do, but really shifting it into a model where it was a win-win for everybody.
Your 2003 book that you wrote for your mom, how did you get that published? Independent publishing wasn't really at its fruition at that point, so it was very difficult to get books published in 2003.
Exactly. So 2003, I wrote a book about letter writing, and it was a very unique book because I actually had pages that you could tear out of the book and write a letter. So I was prompting people to do the work. 2003, we weren't even doing self-development and personal work. And so my book was all about healing and growing this relationship with your mom. And then I had pages that you could pull out of the book and write the letter. Well, nobody wanted to publish it. And in 2003, guess what was just happening? Email. Everybody was doing email. Nobody wanted to do handwritten letters.
Mm-hmm.
And so I didn't want to take no for an answer. So I self-published it myself. And then I went back and got an agent and got a rep and got distribution and stuff like that. But I published and printed the book all on my own. It was like the biggest $21,000 check I'd ever written to get all my books published.
Wow.
And I did them with colored pages and glossy cover and perforated pages. And then I went and got an agent. And then I did a huge campaign across Canada back in the day, book tour, city to city to city, Canada AM, and all the different news channels, and really shared this idea of it doesn't take two people to heal a relationship. It takes one, because my mom never wrote me back. Not that she didn't love me. She just didn't like letter writing, and she just wasn't into it. She still absorbed the letters and it still healed our relationship. But the fascinating thing to me was, and I teach this in the book, is that it just takes one person to heal a relationship. How you feel, how you react, what you want, what your expectations are, and how you understand the other person is really the key to any relationship. It doesn't take two people to fix a relationship. It just takes one.
That is a really, really good point there, JB. And I should write that down. We have a clubhouse on Friday. Yeah. So let me just make a note of that. So can you say that one more time?
Yeah, it doesn't take two people to heal a relationship. It only takes one. And I even have an exercise. So I used to teach forgiveness classes, and I would get two people to come up on stage, and I would have one person stand up and put their hands on their knees, and I'd have the other person lean on them with like all their body weight. And then I would ask them, like, how do you feel? And the person, leaned over on their knees would be like, I'm totally uncomfortable. And the person leaning on them all stretched out would be like, I totally don't feel safe. And I'm like, this is how relationships are. One person feels like they're having all the pressure. Person feels like they're not safe. The relationship is not working because both people together are not feeling balanced, not feeling okay. And so the person that was leaning on the other person, I'd be like, hey, take a step forward and stand up. And then that person would stand up and I'd be like, how do you feel? And they'd be like, way better. And I'd be like, the person who was leaned over, I'm like, how do you feel? And they're like, way better. And I'm like, look, it just took one person to fix that relationship.
I like that. I like that a lot. So you actually pulled off a really amazing feat in 2003 then to make that book possible. It really was published by a real publisher, traditional publisher. And you did that by a creative series of steps to eventually get it to the final goal. So that's awesome.
Yeah, thank you. I'm one of those people that doesn't take no for an answer. I remember a literary agent saying, oh, it's going to be 1 in a million that this book will ever do anything. And I'm like, well, I'm that 1 in a million. And I walked out of his office.
Wow, that is super cool. Okay, so let's talk about if you can just summarize, how many books did you write and what are their names?
Yeah, so I wrote another book called Enjoying Parenting. So in 2016, I took my kids out of school and I decided to travel the world for a year with them. And we went to 11 different countries, and all we did was charity work. So each and every month we go to a new country and we would do charity work while we were there. Now, the interesting story behind that is my son was going into grade 7 and he was going to a school that they called me into the office and they said, we don't think we're going to advance your son to the next grade unless you're willing to medicate him. And I was like, why? And they're like, well, he's just so, he's up in his chair all the time. He always going to the water fountain. He's always asking too many questions. I think you should medicate him so he'll sit down and be more quiet, and then we'll advance him into the next grade. Otherwise, we're going to hold him back a grade. Another moment in my life where I walked out of the office because I was like, wow, like you're only going to graduate my son into grade 7 if he takes medication. And so I decided that that was not what I was going to do. So I took both my kids out of school, 8 and 12. And for a year, we traveled around with different countries and we did charity work. We dug bathrooms and toilets in Mexico. We helped the turtles in Costa Rica. We with the Syrian refugees in Greece. And my kids every single day did charity work. And the fascinating thing is when we came back to Canada and the kids went back into school, I had to have them tested to see where they fit into this curriculum. And my son tested at grade 8.6, so 6 months into grade 8. And they were going to hold him back into grade 6. And so my son actually skipped an entire year by going out and living life and doing things and being where being in that castle, being at Notre Dame, being on the battlefield, seeing the museums. And it was a big awakening to me that, we get so caught up in what the teachers say is correct. And thank goodness I never medicated my son because I never labeled him that he needed to be medicated. And he's a brilliant student. He's an incredible athlete and he's a great human being. But he was marked and scarred by the fact that his teachers wanted him to be medicated and thought that by asking questions, there was something wrong with him. Mm-hmm. So that was a big, big change for me. I decided to homeschool my kids. I world schooled them. I unparented them. I non-parented them. I unschooled them. And so I wrote a book called Enjoying Parenting, not fixing parenting, not perfect parenting, just enjoying parenting, because there is a real symbiotic relationship between you and your kids.
I love it. That's great. I really, I respect that idea a lot. And I'm glad that you won in the end, because that was a true lesson. I think that the educational system really needs to learn.
Yeah, it's true. It's true. Now, conversely, when my daughter came back, she actually decided to repeat the grade that she missed. And so she actually stayed back a year. So my kids who were like 2 years apart are suddenly now 4 years apart in school.
Oh, wow.
But it was really great for her because I let her choose. Like I said, do you want to go ahead? They said she could go ahead into grade 4. And she's like, no, I actually want to repeat grade 3 because I never got to do all the stuff in grade 3. And I was like, okay. And so I really empowered them to make their choice on what was best for them. And they are doing fantastic. They're doing great.
She's going to be lightning years ahead of her peers now, though.
Yeah,
you know that, right?
Yeah, she's 14 and she gets her learner's license. And so all of her friends are like crazy because she has her learners. And yeah, so she's doing great. And she loves being, the oldest in her class. And she loves being, just feeling like she totally fits in. So you have to listen to your kids. And there is this stigma on parenting that you got to do it right. And you got to do it a certain way. And you got to follow these rules and you got to do what is told to you. And the truth is you really have to follow your instincts. Only you know your kids, the best. And if you learn who your kids are and you really get to know them and know their style. I now have 2 beautiful stepkids. They're all very different, but I'll tell you this, when my stepkids came to live with me, I treated them like my own kids. I thought that my stepdaughter was like my daughter and like pink and frilly and fun things. And she's totally opposite. She's like more like a tomboy. And I thought that my stepson was tough and rugged like my son, and he's not. He's totally an artist and he's totally more quiet. And so I had to really adapt to letting my children be exactly who they are and just enjoying those talents so that they can step forth and be the best version of themselves.
That is awesome. Thank you, JB. So just to conclude, you have a lot more books now that you got the Ignite company. So maybe just a few you want to name off the top of your head. We're going to talk about Les Brown in just a moment.
Yeah, really blessed. We have so many books: Ignite Female Changemakers, Ignite Health and Wellness, Ignite Parenting, Ignite Adventure. We have Ignite Possibilities, Ignite the Entrepreneur. So we've been really blessed to pick these themes and then find other people who want to tell their story where they had this Ignite experience where something really changed them. And so they tell that story in each and every one of the books. But we also include a power quote, we include an intention. And then at the end of every story, I make sure sure that each author writes an action step, because you've got to take action. Nothing gets done unless you take action. And so they put in the action steps inside the book. So as the reader, you get to read these powerful stories about people making transformational change. And the truth is, like, when you read a story about somebody who was homeless and just had a gun in their mouth and ready to take their life, and then something happened, they had their ignite moment, and they went on to make $160 million in the real estate industry. Like, that's an incredible story. And if he can do it, you can do it. And so we have so many stories like that. And then these action steps for you to take to just get you closer to your goal.
So how did you meet Les Brown? Les Brown is your new co-author in one of these Ignite series. You want to talk about that?
Yeah, well, I just believe that, what you want, the universe wants for you. And so I was working with a client, and she just was a great sort of connector. And I had mentioned to her, like, I really want to do something with Les Brown. I love possibilities. I love the whole idea of possibilities. It's kind of my jam, possibilities. Les Brown always is talking about possibilities. I've listened to hundreds of his YouTube messages. He really is that incredible, inspirational, #1 speaker on the planet. And so, chatting with her sort of cracked open the universe to say, this is what I want. Another person was introduced to me with another person. And then I got an opportunity to do a private mentorship with Les. And so I signed up for that. And there was 14 of us in the class. And we just really got to be coached by Les Brown. So it was really beautiful. And then I sent him, like a proposal to do a book. And the interesting story behind that is my phone rang one day, and it was an unlisted number. And I was like, who's calling me? And I answered the phone, like, kind of sassy. I'm like, hello. And then they're like, is this JBO? And I'm like, yes, who's this? And they're like, would you hold the phone for Les Brown? And I was like, hello. Like, I totally had to change my attitude. And Les came on the call, and he was like, I got your proposal, and, tell me your ideas. And so I, it took 5 minutes to tell him everything and share with him. And he's like, let's do it. And so then he got off the call, and his associate got back on the call. And what had Les said to me is like, I love your story. I love this idea. Would you be available for a Facebook Live in 10 minutes? And I was like, absolutely. Absolutely. Of course, I was like, going crazy inside, like 10 minutes. I need to be on Facebook Live with Les, 1.8 million people on his Facebook.
Wow.
And so his producer comes back on and says, okay, here's the link, get on Facebook Live, but don't say anything about the book. Don't say anything about the book, because it's not, 100%, none of the contracts are signed. I'm like, okay, I won't say anything about the book. So 10 minutes later, I get on the link. Les comes on. He's like, this is Les Brown, and I'm here with JB Owen, and we're doing a book together. He just told everyone.
That is awesome.
And so there it went. It was all said and done. And so we talked the whole time about the book and the idea and ignite moments. And here's the thing. So many people have ignite moments around Les Brown. Like, he has said something, he's been there, they've heard his voice, they've been in an event, they've seen a YouTube where some pivotal moment in their life was unfolding, and Les Brown said something, mentored them, did something, they heard him, and it changed their trajectory. And I thought, what an incredible book to do, to honor Les Brown's legacy, and to talk about the power of voice and the power of message and the power of listening to other people who are inspirational. And so all of the stories in the book have this little silver thread, this common denominator, that there was something that Les Brown said, a quote of his, that was really the catalyst for them creating change in their life.
Wow. That is an awesome, awesome story. And now you're making books with him, and the rest is history.
Yeah. And what I want to tell all your listeners from that story is be ready. Like, be ready. Like, what you want, what you're going after. You've done the work together. So when you get the phone call or the knock on the door, the opportunity or the email, like, take it, be ready, go after it, and prepare yourself, because the universe is listening when you say you want something. And I had been saying, like, I want to work with Les Brown. I want to do a book with Les Brown in 2021. I'm going to do a book with Les Brown. And so the universe is like, okay, here you go. And so you got to be ready for when those moments show up.
What's the name of that book, JB?
Ignite the hunger in you. We all know Les Brown talks about being hungry. You got to be hungry. And so
Can
the
you
book
show
is
us a
called...
copy?
Yes, absolutely. Okay, here we go. I'm reaching over. It's on the other side of my desk. Ignite the hunger in you. Ignite the hunger in you.
Let's take a picture. You want to take a picture?
Sure, do it.
I don't know how to do it. I don't know how to do it, but if you can do it.
Okay, wait. Let's do it. I'll take a picture on my phone. Ready?
Ready?
There you go. And I'll do one like this. Me and Dr. Finance. Great. I'll put it on my Facebook.
All right. That's awesome. Yeah, so we'll support that book. That's awesome. You got 35 amazing other co-authors, right? 35, is that right?
Yeah, there's
Lundy,
33 other authors.
33.
There's 35 of us in total. And so, yeah, it's a really great book. And, people ask me all the time, like, what's in it for the reader? And the truth is, what's in it for the reader is really for you to see that if somebody else can do it, I can do it too.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. Appreciate it, JB. All right. So let's talk about a few more things and then we'll go into my standard questions. What is this significance of traveling? I know that the reason I wanted to ask that question because I relate to people who travel a lot. I've traveled very, very much. You've been and that incredible story you told us about with your kids. I mean, that's awesome. I always wanted to do something like that. So why do people travel? What is the benefit of traveling as it relates to anything, but you could relate to anything you want. But I think inspiration, which is the theme of what you talk about, inspiring.
Well, there's so many different layers to when you travel. I mean, first of all, there's this real courageous factor. I mean, I remember the very first time I went to China by myself. I mean, it was scary. I didn't know. I mean, I was getting off the plane in this strange country where nobody speaks my language or I don't speak their language. And so there's this courage, this determination that you have to bring up within you, which obviously builds fortitude in you. But the second thing is when you travel, you realize, you meet, you awaken, you find out so many things you didn't know about how other people live and what's important to other people and cultures and religions. And I love food. And so whenever I travel, I'm eating everything. I'm trying everything. And, people laugh at me when I go to Asia a lot, I'm having monkey brain and duck tongue and alligator and all kinds of fun stuff. Like I want to try everything. I want to try it out. And so, immersing yourself in someone, in the food and the culture and the language. I'm always trying to speak the language. I'm trying to learn a few things that I can say in their language. And so that really awakens you and opens you up to learning new things and being a student of life. So often we think, I know everything. I got to know everything. I got to act smart. I got to act like I know everything. When you travel, you sort of surrender and you become a student of life. And when you become a student of life, you become aware of more things about yourself and the people around you. And it actually really sort of heightens your wisdom and it heightens your experience. And it just allows new things to come in. And last but not least about travel, you find a part of you that you possibly didn't have before. When I travel with my kids by myself, a lot of people criticize me. Like, isn't it dangerous to be a woman, in Costa Rica or Dominican Republic all by yourself? And I was like, yeah, it was a little bit scary. But it made you smarter. It made you wiser. It made you learn things. And I remember coming home from that trip, like I really felt like I had a superhero cape around my neck because when we got lost, we figured it out. We were like a team. We needed to figure it out. When there was a tarantula this big on the floor in our hut, we were like, okay, what are we going to do here? And we figured it out. And so that challenges that happen when you travel, they just awaken you and they inspire you and they make you stronger. And so I'm just a big proponent of travel because there's just so many good pieces to it.
I love it. That's a great response. We could have a whole segment on Clubhouse about just this.
Yeah.
You would like actually a lot? Jim Cathcart. Okay, Jim Cathcart. Everybody knows him as a great famous speaker, but he actually rides motorcycles in crazy places. He's 75 and he rode like so many different really cool places that like he just rode around all over the world. So very interesting.
We met a lot of other cyclists while we were traveling. Next summer, we're going to cycle to Newfoundland and
wow.
Do all the Atlantic provinces. We would love to cycle in Croatia or Kazakhstan or, through the Pyrenees. But obviously with COVID, we just have to be a little bit more, cautious. So next summer, we're going to do Newfoundland. And there's so many incredible things in the Maritimes that are just so different from Canada. Canada is so unique from coast to coast, and the culture and the people are so different in all the provinces. So we're going to head over there. But I'm with you. Travel and experiences and perseverance. Like there's one thing to travel in style and go 5-star all the way, but there's another thing about simplifying it and just getting what you need, having all you need, and just really enjoying the roughness and the ruggedness and the rawness of it.
Absolutely. I agree 100%. Thank you, JB. Okay, what are the pros and cons of a collaboration book for co-authors? I'm going to ask you the same question afterwards for influencers, but right now, so we're talking about collaboration books, having multiple people, kind of like with Les Brown, where you have 33 co-authors. What are the pros and cons of that for the actual co-authors themselves, not the leading influencers, the other people in the book?
Well, there's a lot of pros in writing a compilation book. First of all, you get to be in a community. So you get to be around other like-minded people like you. So each one of our books are a theme. And so if you're in our goddess book, obviously the other people in there are goddesses. And so you get to learn and grow from them and benefit from them. When a book is launched and you have 33 people or 35 people or 50 people in our email changemaker book, is actually those people are all promoting the book. So when we had people promoting the book in Italy and France and Germany and Brazil, all of that different promotion supports all of the authors. So you're getting promotion in Italy, but you live in Canada, or someone in Australia is doing a news article and you live in France. And so there's this multitude, there's this big buzz and this hub of things that are going on because all the authors are supporting the book. It's also a really great way to obviously leverage your expertise. So if you're doing something in your industry and you want to up level a little bit, because a book is a door opener. You use a book to get on a podcast, to do a summit, to have a conversation. You use a book because you have co-authors and other people. So the people in the book interact with each other and share on their different platforms. And so there's a lot of benefits in being in a compilation book. You save money because it's sort of amortizing the cost. You get to have the experience incrementally. So it's not this big, heavy burden all on you. Everybody's moving along. So I personally think a compilation book is a fantastic way to get started. It's a great way to dip your toe into learning, into writing, into editing. I actually always teach our authors how to do the process so they can do it for their solo book. I can't say that there's a lot of cons in doing a compilation book because in all essence, like you take from the experience what you want. And so I've never had anyone say like, oh, I didn't enjoy that experience. So I
Yeah,
don't have a con for you.
and it's important to choose wisely who you're doing the book with, though, right? That is why you didn't have cons, because you have a great team. But if someone was an author and they chose the wrong co-author or the wrong publishing team, it could be a nightmare. Time wasted,
Yes.
money wasted, right?
Yeah, I will agree. I've had many people come to me with horror stories of other experiences and, many publish or agents who are in contracts with publishers and they can't write their story. They don't own their story. Somebody else has the rights to their story. So there are a lot of cons in other compilation businesses. I believe that you own your story. It's your content. You should be able to tell your story as often as you want. I don't lock people into contracts. And one of the other things that we're really great at is when you are in a compilation book, we make sure that the theme is really well and cohesive. Sometimes people do compilation books and 10 authors just all write a story, they all edit it themselves, or they have independent editors, and then they just all throw it into a book and then they print it. And there isn't really that cohesion. There isn't that feeling like all these stories belong to each other. And so if you decide you want to be in a compilation book, don't just do the cheapest one or the free one or the one that seems the easiest. Work with somebody who really is making sure that the book is a good product, because the reader is actually who the book is for. It's less for you and it's more for the reader. And I think that's the difference in our company. As a lot of other people, compilation books is like, oh, it's just a big business card. I don't believe in that. This book is really designed to impact people's lives. And so I put every single ounce of our effort into making a beautiful book. It's less for the author and more for the reader. Now, both people get to benefit. And then I like to say the third win is, the person who the reader connects with or the person who the author connects with gets to benefit. In our case, all the online proceeds of our books go towards building a school. So we have another layer of win. So you really want to do your homework when you're working with a compilation book and who the company is publishing it.
Yeah, it's fantastic. And as both of us being also authors, I know you're a publisher as well, but and I had a publishing company too, Criniti Publishing, for my 3 books. But as authors, we know that you also, I guess one con can be, and I like to hear your thoughts, JB, is that I know when I was an author, I didn't want to have other writers because I wanted this to be my baby. Each one of these is this is mine. This is my work 100%. I'm responsible for every word in here. It's mine though, right? When you become a co-author or collaborate in a collaboration book, you kind of lose a little bit of that. So that, just to balance out the argument, would you agree?
Yeah, well, I never let people ghostwrite their stories. We're not ghostwriters. I believe that, see, I call myself a publisher, but in honesty, I'm really a transformational person. I really want people to go through a transformational experience. So when an author comes to us, they're digging deep, they're finding the story, they're looking for the reason, they're going back in time, they're reassessing what happened, they're bringing the meaning to that story. So for example, if your, grade 4 teacher told you you'll never amount to anything, you live your life certainly with that thought in mind. And then there's this ignite moment where that idea really gets, sort of the lid gets blown off of that. When you write about that experience, what you thought, how you lived your life, how you changed your idea, and then you do it in the sense you want to help somebody else learn from your experience, there's this incredible 360-degree view healing that comes from that experience. And that's why I want to walk authors through that process. I don't want to just write their story for them. And so we're not a big proponent of ghostwriting, but to your point is, yes, so I want the story to be yours, just like, and I want the whole entire book to be the collective. And so the 35 people in the book are really a part of the book. They're part of the process. Our happiness book, one of the authors wanted to put exercises and put actually things where people could write in the book. And so we morphed the book into that. And so we really let you be a part of the entire process, and people really get involved in it. They're not just like handing in a piece of paper and then leaving. Every week we're meeting, we're having masterminds, we're connecting with each other. I'm teaching you the business of being an author. So it is kind of a different process than just writing words, putting them on a page, putting the book on a book, and putting a book on the shelf.
Okay, that's brilliant. Thank you, JB. And then just turning the question to the influencer, what are the pros and cons of a collaboration book for the leading influencer of that book? So in in the case with Les Brown and yourself actually were the leading influencers of that book. So what's the pro and con for Les Brown or the next Les Brown in your other collaboration books?
Yeah, well, so I love doing collaboration books. In fact, I have like 20 on my vision board of like doing collaboration books with different visionaries and different people that are creating businesses, because they have a community. And so for me, if you're an influencer, you have a community and you have other people writing stories where your community or your philosophy or your ideas really change the needle in their life, like really move the needle for them. Why wouldn't you want a book full of stories of how other people are commenting or sharing how your idea really prompted a change in their life? And so if you're an influencer like Les Brown, our next book is with Ryan Serhant. If you are in that arena where there are people that have been influenced by your story, your message, your experience, you want people to be telling that how you are influencing them. You want to have a whole community of people talking about how something you did influences a change in their life. And I think it's a win-win for influencers, because they get to use that as a tool to share with people who may be stepping into their ecosystem. Hey, you've never been in my ecosystem before. Here's a book with 35 other people who have been in my ecosystems. Here's what they learned. I don't need to tell you what it's like. Read their stories and find out what it's like. And so it's actually a really great tool for influencers and celebrities to use, so people learn more about them. And I'm a huge proponent of the authenticity, the heartfeltness, and the vulnerability. So let's just pull down the mask for a minute. Let's just, pull away the fact that, we're these influencers are feeling like they have to be great. That isn't the truth. They're human beings. They have good days and bad days. They have an Achilles heel. They have the Jacob's arrow in their life. And so telling that story is so much more authentic to building a good community, a good client base, true customers. And so I think people want that more than they want the shiny, glossy, everything's perfect look.
Yeah, that is brilliant. Looking at it from the Les Brown perspective, though, or like that influencer perspective, not Les Brown in particular, but Les is a speaker, not a writer. But what if you took a person who was a leading influencer that was a writer, that was their true passion, and you made them the leading influencer? What is the con to them? Are they giving up the ability to have the 100% of the authorship for themselves? I mean, would you see that as a con, or is the con actually a positive?
Actually, I don't see it at all, because the influencer, so for example, with Les is a speaker and I'm a publisher. And so many people who want to speak they also want to write. And so many people who want to write also want to speak. So this was a partnership made in heaven, because what happens is Les taught everybody all the speaking side of it. I taught everybody the authorship side of it.
Wow.
And together, now they have a great book, they have a book, and they've learned how to speak. And so if people are collaborating, what I often do and always encourage is that the influencer actually does a teaching and a training, so that their philosophies are now more injected into the authors. And so they can use that for their own business. See, I really am a proponent of how do we build businesses? How do we build sustainable businesses? How do we build conscious businesses? How do we build businesses that help humanity, not just help ourselves? And so when you're in a compilation book and the leader of the book or the celebrity of the book can also teach you something, can train you and educate you as an author, then you have this really incredible experience. And so many authors want to step into compilation books because they're actually now getting to benefit from the leader of the book in a way that they couldn't otherwise.
That's brilliant. Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. Thank you, JB.
You're welcome.
Okay. What inspires you the most in life?
Wow, that's what inspires me the most. Well, I have to be honest, like the unknown, what inspires me the most. Like I really love challenge. I love, and hence cycling, 5,000 kilometers. I love the idea of making something possible, making something out of nothing. I love crafting. I love building. I love designing. I've been graphic design. I've been building clothes. I've been building books. I've been making products. So I love, what really inspires me is an idea into a product, an idea into fruition, an idea into an event, to see something that was you mastered full in your mind. And then the next thing you know, it's like, it's happening. When I was on your show, and everyone was talking about Ignite Moments and talking about the book, and the authors were sharing, and Les was sharing, and you were sharing, and the other people, the readers were sharing, like I was in tears, because this was an idea. This was just an idea that over time became a process, became a system, turned into something that is now changing people's lives. And I think that's what really inspires me. Like, how do you take an idea and then turn it into something that's really going to make a big difference? And so building a school was an idea, found an organization to work with. We work with Classroom of Hope. Now it's going to be turned into a school. Creating legacy for people. I do brand building with people. I work with a lot of authors to really build their brand, their legacy brand, that brand that's going to surpass them. And so they have an idea, and we take that idea and we put it into fruition. And so that really gets me inspired. I'm like an idea machine, but I'm unique because I actually do it. Like an idea will come, and then next thing you know, like we're executing it. And my team is always chuckling because there are people who are just ideas and there are people who are just executors. And I'm like, idea, execute.
You're both. That's what makes you a good entrepreneur. You actually, you can generate that idea and finish through with it. So why is it important to inspire possibilities in others?
Oh my gosh. I mean, that seems like so obvious, like we have to inspire what's possible, because so much of our lives, we're told, don't do that. You can't do that. Don't talk too loud. Don't do that. Don't go there. Don't think that way. And the truth is, we're like suppressed in what's possible by this word don't, or can't, or shouldn't. And so it's so important that we awaken to what's possible, because the truth is, everything and anything is possible. We didn't know we were going to have these things in our hand 20 years ago that we live off of. We didn't know that people could go to the moon. We didn't know that, there was all these inventions. We didn't know those things existed until somebody decided that it was possible. It was possible to drive a car. It was possible to put a candle and turn it into a lamp. Like, somebody had to believe in possibilities. And if you look at every great invention and every great, health turn on population for health, when you look at the inventor of penicillin, when you look at like the guy who built the bridge, like there are all these people who had to believe in something before it was a fact. And so that's why possibilities are so important. I mean, can you imagine if we can fix climate change, if we can end world hunger, if we can, save the polar ice caps, if we have to think that yes, that's possible. And in thinking that it's possible, then we have permission to go and find the solution.
And that's why you would want to inspire others to think that everything is possible too, because then you can help the person who is going to get that idea to build a bridge or to build, whatever the next appliance is or car or
Right.
whatever that we need, right? Okay, so, and you kind of touched on this already. It was my next question, but let's see if we can formalize it in 30 seconds or less. Is anything possible? Now, let me clarify. This, one of Les Brown's main speaking events was called "It Is Possible," right? I think it was called "It Was Possible," right? Yeah. So we had a huge Clubhouse event a few weeks ago about this very topic, and
I wish I was there.
you were sitting on the top stage with Les Brown.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
Is anything possible with that context established?
I do believe that anything is possible. I mean, there is no limit to what the human mind can create, and there is no limit to what the human being will go and do. And so I do think anything is possible. I mean, obviously we can't change gravity or laws like that, but can we? We've done DNA sequencing. We've done all kinds of things that we didn't think were possible years ago. And so I think it's naive of us to say something's not possible. And I think it's only empowering for us to say anything is possible. Anything is possible. I would love to be the person who invents teleportation. Like, I would love for that, to be able to do that. I have a dream of like creating a machine that can like attach to your brain. And when you sleep, it like turns your dreams into a movie. And then you wake up in the morning, you can like watch your movie of your dream. I mean, who knows? Like, what if I believed so succinctly that it was possible, then I would move in that direction of making it happen. And I think by telling people it's not possible, then you prevent people from taking action. If they know it is possible, they'll take the action to get there. The guy that ran the mile in 4 minutes, I mean, they said it was impossible. He said, I'm going to do it. I'm going to take the steps to make it happen. And so we have to believe it's possible.
Excellent response. And JB, and I appreciate you looking at it from the counter argument. What happens if we tell everybody that's not possible? What's going to happen then? So that kind of explains the answer more. Thank you. All right. One more question, and we'll get into the standard questions. So figure about a minute or so. What is better, going uphill or downhill?
Oh, this is so good. So I'm writing a book right now called Wisdom from the Back of a Bike. And it's all about the things that I learned on the bike. And so it's so true. I had this exact experience. When you go uphill, there is this trudge, like there's this work, you're doing the work, but there's so much reward in doing the work. When you get to the top of the hill, you feel exhilarated because you did the work. And when you go down the other side, you think that it's all fun, but I'll tell you, there was a time Peter and I were going down a hill. We were going 78 kilometers an hour on our bike. It was scary. Like, I was hanging on, praying, like the wind was hitting us and blowing us, and there was rocks and everything. So going downhill isn't always just isn't as exciting as you think. That can be really scary too. But if you relate it to life, like, you can't go uphill forever. Like, you just can't. It's not going to happen. You couldn't go up and up and up and up and up. But people always want to be on the rise. They always want everything to be good in life. Conversely, you can't always go downhill either. You can't just keep going downhill. Like, eventually the road will flatten out. But sometimes there is a lot of joy on the downhill. Sometimes going down that hill is exciting, but people are like, I never want to be on the downslide of my life. Or I never want, anything to go wrong. There is lessons in both the uphill and the downhill, and they're both beautiful, and they have to happen. In fact, every time Peter and I would zing down a valley into, this incredible river at the bottom and have all that fun, we knew we had to climb back up the other side. And every time a hill would come up and we would grudge to the top of the hill, we knew that on the other side was going to be the fun. And so you just have to accept that life has the ups and the downs, and just welcome them both and learn from both of them and embrace both of them. And that's the most fun, is knowing they're both there.
Yeah, I'm just thinking about it from, I've always recognized this argument, but I always said that, like, it's kind of ironic, like it's kind of the opposite of what like instinct would say. You going uphill, there's actually, of course, there's a struggle. You're walking up there. It's hard. It's harder going uphill, right? But when you get to the top, you're there. When you go downhill, it's easier. But in the metaphor of life, like you said, no one really wants to go downhill, but it is easier to go downhill. So like, how do you balance that out? Like,
Yeah, you got to love both of them. Like, you got to be like, I'll tell you, this year I learned something from the raspberries. So when we were cycling in June, the raspberries were just nice and green and beautiful. And come July, the raspberries were full of raspberries and we were eating raspberries in the ditch. And by the end of August, the raspberries were all gone. And what I realized is, like, we as humans don't learn from the raspberries. We can't be blooming all the time. We can't be producing fruit all the time. And if you look at Mother Nature, like, she actually takes the time for rest. People, rest in the wintertime or rest in the rainy season, or there's this rest time. And then there's this blossoming this time. There's this blooming time. And so I think that I learned a lot from the raspberries. Like, I can't be producing every single day of every single month of every month of the year. It's just not possible. I'll burn out. I'll never be able to do it. And if you had raspberries every single day, all the time, you would get tired of raspberries. And so it was like, I learned a lot from the raspberries this year. It was so funny. My friend, she's a therapist, and she's like, I've spent 20 years being a therapist and you learned everything from the raspberries.
Thank you, JB. All right, we're going to get into some quick questions here. Get about 5, 10 more, about 8 more questions left, about a minute each. Let's see. Can one book change the world?
Absolutely. Absolutely. We've seen it with Think and Grow Rich. We've seen it with The Secret. We've seen it with Celestine Prophecy. We've seen it with the greatest salesman in the world. Like, we've seen it. We've seen a book. We've seen it with the Bible. We've seen it with so many books. We've seen books change the world. Absolutely.
All right. What role has networking played in your life?
Networking is super important because you want to surround yourself with people who are like-minded. So when you network, you work your way through the crowd to find the people who are vibrating at the same frequency as you. And I think that's vitally important. I did a conference with Jay Shetty, and he split us all up in the room. He's like, okay, the people who like this, go to this corner. The people who hate that, go to this corner. The people who don't mind it, go here. The people who would never even consider that, go here. And so the room was split up, and it was interesting because, interestingly enough, of the 200 people, it was like 45, 47, 51. It was like this really even split. And as the person who absolutely loves this and hates that, I couldn't believe that there were people over there, but that's just the way the world is. And so you have to just understand who you are, network to find the people that work with you. So when he split us up in the room, all the people that loved that, we were all together. We were happy. It was great. It was wonderful. We didn't have to hang out with the people who hated it. And so it was beautiful.
That's awesome. Thank you. Is mentoring important, and who are some of your mentors?
Hey, mentoring is the most important thing you can do. You have to mentor. The reason why mentoring is so important is because you have to learn what you need to teach. And so if you're teaching something, you're becoming a student of it. And if you're showing someone else how to do it, you're going to learn how to do it. And so one of the ways to really push yourself to learn something is to get a mentee and to mentor somebody. I have some really beautiful mentors. And, I will honestly say my son, 17 years old, one of the most amazing mentors, because he has taught me to look at life in a very different way. He's shown me what love is. He's shown me what true unconditional acceptance is. My daughter, another incredible mentor. I mean, there are so many times where she totally knows my love language. We do this in our family, like, what's your love language? And so something will happen and my daughter will, Mom, you did a good job, Mom. It was so amazing, Mom. And she'll totally start doing my love language. And I'll be like, thank you. And so my kids have been really incredible mentors. Of course, Les Brown is a beautiful and powerful mentor. Every time I talk to him, and we talk often, he awakens something. And so my mom is a beautiful mentor. She is a reverend, and she reminds me of things that I just don't think of, that are, really gifts from God. And so mentors come in all shapes and all sizes and all ages. And so just be aware of those mentors that step into your life. It's not a coincidence.
Brilliant response. All right, JB, into the finance stuff now. Dr. Finance, I have to, right? So what are your favorite financial books, if any?
Well, I love the EMyth. Oh my gosh, I cried a couple of times in that book. I know I told you that when we did Clubhouse, but there was something about that book that it was like, he knows me, like he sees my pain, he knows my agony, he knows what I'm going through. And so it was such a beautiful book.
How long ago did you read that, by the way? Did
Pardon?
you read that before we did the Clubhouse with Michael Gerber? You actually read it years before, I think you said?
Yeah, I've read it years before, and I've actually
wow.
had the workbook. And so I really enjoy the workbook.
Wow.
I quite like 10X. I think Grant did a great job of 10X. I have another book called Pivot, Passion, and Purpose. I think that's a really great book. I really enjoy that. I read a lot of course, the the Millionaire book by Harv Eker. I think that was like one of the first books I ever read about how to be a millionaire, think like a millionaire. And so that was a really great book. I've read Think and Grow Rich numerous times. I have all my little tabs and all my little sticky notes on it. And so I think you have to read books. I read a fantastic book about a woman in Canada, and I forget her name, I apologize, but she was the CEO for Home Depot and then went over to be the CEO for Michael's Crafts. And great book about a woman in business and just her journey and going through being a CEO for such a huge company.
That's awesome. Thank you, JB. So do we need money to survive?
Absolutely. Absolutely. We need money to survive because money is the things that you need to make you have the ability to do what you're good at. So if you want to help children in an orphanage, if you want to, be Mothers Against Drunk Drivers, if you want to make sure that your local town has a soccer field, we do need money for that. We live in a world that money does make things happen, but we don't need money to breathe. We don't need money to be accepted. We don't need money to make us a better person, but we do need money to facilitate our visions and help us accomplish our purpose. And our purpose is what comes from inside. And that's really a soul-driven thing. But we live in a world where money makes things move, makes products happen, brings in people and team members and those sorts of things. So survive in the sense that live like when we were cycling and we were living like in a motorhome out in the bush for, 45 days at a time, we were like, yeah, we could live here. I mean, there were people living up there with no water and no electricity, and they were living off the land. And, I'm sure that they had just the money that they needed. So it's a complex answer on, I guess, what you think survival is.
Thank you, JB. Do we need, I'm sorry. Is finance necessary for everyone?
Is finance necessary for everyone?
Finance, the subject of finance, not like
Yes,
finance what people think of as funding and stuff.
I think so much. I think we do our kids a disservice by not teaching that in schools as much as we can. I think it's really a travesty that kids don't know how to, balance their money, put savings away, invest, how to do a mortgage. Like, I think those are things that really is a disservice to all of us, that we're just not aware of our finances. And we have my accountant was telling me about like how many people have fear of the government and fear of taxes and fear of the IRS and fear of all these things about their taxes and how they just don't really know. And so I think the more you can educate yourself on your finances, the absolutely better your world will be. And so I'm yes and yes and yes.
Great, thank you. All right, we got 3 more questions left. How important is having a purpose in business, and what is your purpose? So that's actually 2 questions combined.
Yeah, you have to have your purpose. You have to know what your purpose is. And for people like, I don't know what my purpose is, this is what I would say to you: go find it. Like, go have fun, go investigate, go be a student of your own life, go do all the different things. When I was reinventing myself after my divorce, I tried everything. I did a little bit of everything. I went to every course. I did all kinds of things. I tried new things. I met new people. And I was like, I don't like that. I like that. I don't like that. So find out who you are. And when you become aware, know thyself, then you really dial into your purpose. And I think only when you know your purpose is when your business is really successful, because otherwise you're just going through the motions.
And
my purpose is to ignite others so that they feel the freedom and the ability to be exactly who they need to be.
I like that a lot. All right. Thank you, JB. What would you like to accomplish in the next 10 years or so?
Wow, well, that's a great question. I mean, even listening to Michael Gerber's wife last week, when she was talking about, Michael said, you only got 10 years. I said to my husband when I started Ignite, like, I want to do this for 10 years. I want to give it all I got for 10 years and then, move on to the next thing. And so in the next 10 years, I really would like to create a curriculum that inspires possibilities in students from kindergarten to grade 12. And I'd like to make that curriculum be free for the entire world, anybody who wants that, because possibilities should be free. And I want to use thought leaders leaders to help create that curriculum, not bureaucrats and politicians and educators like the ones who are teaching my son. I want to use the people who are inspiring minds to awaken and create a curriculum like that. At the same time, I'd like to do something called the Possibility Institute, where thought leaders can come together, kind of like Disneyland and the UN come together, like really awakening possibilities for thought leaders to just stretch their minds and be around like-minded people. And I also would really like to build 12 schools in the next 12 months and help the Classroom of Hope and ignite the minds of kids. And I'm going to do a TV show about igniting possibilities.
Wow, that's awesome. Now, in the spirit of, you like Michael E. Gerber, the EMyth, for your business, is that in any of your plans to build this Ignite publishing company in a way where you can sell it at any point, or is this just your baby? You're going to run with this for?
No, absolutely. Like Michael has inspired me actually to franchise. So I'll just put it out there. I would love to have an Ignite in France, in French, Ignite in Spain, in Spanish, and Ignite in Tokyo, in Japanese. And so I would love to franchise Ignite, because what I'm doing, anyone can do. I can show you and walk you through all the systems and procedures. Thank you, Michael, of actually how to create your own Ignite business. And so my goal in the next 3 to 5 years is actually to have franchisees and to have Ignite books in native languages in other countries instead of having them all just be in English.
Wow. I like it. Big plans. I like it. I like it. All right. One more question. What would you like to be your legacy to this world?
What I like to be my legacy? Well, I really believe that if I can create a curriculum that is free to every single person and gives them the ability to see what's possible for them and learn as they develop through their life on what's possible for them as children, for parents of children, I think that would be my legacy, is to create the idea of possibilities. Now, I am in the process of creating a database where everybody can share their Ignite moment. And so I would really love to have 7 billion stories. It's called Ignitopedia. And all people could put in their stories. And then we could have a database of stories. You literally could go into Ignitopedia and be like, woman, Alabama, 35 years old, loves golf. And then all these other stories would come up and create this unity and this connection and people finding each other through stories. I mean, people find each other in Clubhouse, people find each other on Facebook. But if you could find somebody that has a story just like yours, can you imagine the connection you would feel? And so I really want that to be my legacy.
I really like that a lot. All right, JB, thank you so much. So that's pretty much it with questions. And folks, if you are watching this very in the live, you just let you know this Friday, JB is going to be the guest speaker with Les Brown. She's going to be the main speaker this time, though, on Clubhouse in my room. The last time we pulled over 5,000 people, 600 in the room at one point. So JB, we're going to reverse roles here. Les is going to start first. JB is going to be the main speaker. So come this Friday between 7 and 9 p.m. Eastern time in Clubhouse, and hopefully you'll enjoy it. So JB, I'd like to leave the floor to you before I conclude the podcast. Anything you want to say, anything you want to show to the audience, more than welcome to. So the floor is yours.
Well, I want to thank you so much for having me. It's a treat to be with you. And I'm just loving the growth of our friendship. And thank you again. Like-minded people come together and there's no coincidence. I'll leave your listeners with one little JB-ism. I love to talk about 10 minutes to transformation. And so many people ask me, like, how do you do what you do? And how do you get so much done? And I have this thing in my mind where I'm like, 10 minutes to transformation. It just takes 10 minutes. 10 minutes to work on your website, 10 minutes to grow your business, 10 minutes to start a new idea, 10 minutes to connect with somebody that might help move the needle in your business. Anyone can do anything for 10 minutes. The brain knows how to do something for 10 minutes. So when you push past the resistance barrier and decide, I'm going to do it for 10 minutes, I'm going to work out for 10 minutes, I'm going to edit my book for 10 minutes. What actually happens is you break through the resistance barrier and that 10 minutes turns into 20 minutes or 30 minutes. And before you know it, you've actually done more than you thought, but you use the 10 minutes of transformation to break through the resistance and get yourself moving in the direction you want to go. It just takes a little bit each day to get you there. So go after it.
That's awesome, JB. And if they wanted to get more information about you and your company, what is the website and where at on social media are you located?
Thank you so much. So you can find me at igniteyou.life. That's our website. We talk about all the new books that we're doing. jb@igniteyou.life is my email. I love to make myself accessible. I'm the only JB Owen on Facebook. You can find me there. And I'm the Pink Billionaire on Instagram and in Clubhouse. And please just reach out to me directly. I really love helping people, and I make myself accessible for that reason.
Now, JB, you call yourself Pink Billionaire. Have you really hit the billionaire status, or is that just a good name for?
Yeah. So I have not yet hit billionaire, but here's the thing. And I say this to people all the time, you got to be it to become it. You got to be it to become it. So I need to start training my brain, training my vernacular, getting my body ready. And every single day I think about, what would the Pink Billionaire do today? How would I run my business today being the Pink Billionaire? What do I need to do to be the Pink Billionaire? And just to share with you, the billionaire is not so much about the money. It's about the impact. See, we have the ability to impact 1 billion lives. And the pink part is really about being feminine and fierce and fabulous, because for a long time, women, we're trying to live their life in a men's world and try to be male business orientated. And I think women really have their own niche and their own way of doing things. And so the Pink Billionaire is really to show people that you can be, especially women, you can be fabulous and feminine, and you can be billionaire status by making a 1 billion person impact. And so the Pink Billionaire, she makes me work harder each and every day.
That is really good. I like that. That's very creative. I didn't even think about that. I was just curious, but it makes a lot of sense. I'm coming at it from the money side. I'm like, money, but I impact billions of lives. I like that.
Yeah, my next book, my book 24 months out, is called Billionaire Consciousness, because we really do need to think that if you want to be a billionaire, people say it all the time, I want to be a billionaire, but there's a consciousness that is required to be a billionaire. You have to be thinking longer term, you have to be thinking legacy, and you have to be thinking like, multi-person, countries, communities. It's not just about numbers on a bank statement. There isn't a consciousness that really has to be ingrained in you to think on a much deeper level if you really want to be a billionaire. And that's what I'm practicing and working towards.
That is awesome. Thank you, JB. All right, folks. So definitely check JB out at her website. And also like to thank you, JB, for coming and to our podcast today. And very honored to have you here. Look forward to our Friday night on Clubhouse. All right, folks, to conclude. So here we go. Dr. Anthony Criniti IV here on Dr. Finance Live podcast you've been watching. Hope you enjoy it. Definitely check out. I got my website here, drfinance.info. Like, subscribe, follow all that stuff. I'll be posting this out to YouTube, all the podcast directories. They'll be going pretty much everywhere. Also, real quick, if you are interested in reading my first 3 books, which is the foundation to all my teachings, start with The Necessity of Finance. This was my first book I wrote as a finance professor about 10 years ago, teaching students about the overview of the subject, the direction, the future, and little has changed since then. It's right on point. The second book, The Most Important Lessons in Economics and Finance, there's about 218 principles in there of the most important lessons in history. And that all led to the great last book, which is about 500 plus pages, The Survival of the Richest, connecting survival to finance, economics, biology, many other subjects. It is definitely a mouthful. So check it out, folks. And then, of course, the 13 Steps to Riches. I'm involved with the project with Eric Swanson right now, highlighting 13 books about Napoleon Hill's 13 Steps to Riches in his Think and Grow Rich. And got some more books coming up. We'll definitely let you know as soon as I get the details of that. But thank you, folks. Appreciate that. And look forward to seeing you on the next episode. Thanks, JB.
Thank you so much. And next time I'm reading your book's going to be my favorite finance book.
Oh, yeah. I like it. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Blessings.
Thank you, JB.